Hello, hello. So now we will finish off chapter seven. The first part of chapter seven had a lot of technology and Guthrie that I wanted to cover. The rest of the chapter is more straightforward, but it's got important stuff for society, life, therapy. Uh, it's a good it's a good chapter. Now I provided you with some links. Skinner is going to come up in this chapter in terms of reinforcement. Um, and as the book has pointed out and points out again, he's not a fan of theory. Uh, when I first came back to Scranton, I had to teach a course, learning and behavior, no, human behavior, and it involved three small books, and one of them was this book by Skinner. And boy, he still has a large forehead. Um, Students hated it, uh, so I'm not uh, really encouraging you to buy it. But it's it deals with issues related to how to build a better society, which we all should be concerned with. And I'm pretty excited to be living in a country that has pursuit of happiness in its founding, one of its most important founding documents. Um, yeah, I mean, the founding fathers uh, got some things wrong, including them all being fathers. Um, but this is quite the phrase: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Uh, I'm a fan. Thank you, Thomas Jefferson, who was a slave owner, um, but progress is being made. The Enlightenment did help change the world, and I'm very happy about that. Although some people want to take us back to before the Enlightenment, uh, to when we got things from dogma rather than from enlightenment. Okay, so why is this part of the chapter important? Well, the heading that we're starting with, impulsiveness and self-control, um, is pretty important uh, to uh, happiness and a smoothly running society. And one of the reasons I worry a lot about lead, which is not really learning and behavior, but there's basically no safe level of lead, uh, certainly in our drinking water. And Scranton is an old city, and lead pipes were very popular. The Romans liked lead pipes too, and they even added lead to their wine to improve taste, particularly in children. Uh, Exposure to lead can give a bias toward impulsiveness and lack of self control. And if you want a society that's dysfunctional or a society with dysfunctional people in it, destroy the parts of the brain They're involved in controlling impulsiveness and self-control. And yeah, we ended the first part of the chapter with choice and matching, and uh, that's important. But yeah, we make choices all the time. You had to make a choice whether to listen to this lecture. I had to make a choice whether to record this lecture. Um, the If you're graduating, you may be in the process of making choices about your career, which is pretty serious. Um, and breakfast, lunch, dinner, choice, choice, choice. Uh, if you're dealing with addictions like love or cigarette smoking or uh, other drugs, you have to make choices all the time. And there may be personality differences, and of course, light exposure can lead to some of these problems. But people who are prone to addiction seem to find it harder to make wise decisions. And as a therapist, if any of you are going in that direction, um, you have to have strategies um, to encourage people to behave wisely uh, for their benefit and sometimes for society's benefit. Delayed reinforcers. Um, you know, doing something smart now so that you can get something better later. Uh, this is important, and there are some figures down here that are relevant. Uh, Delay discounting, and as you can see, that as you have to wait for things, uh, their value goes down. It's really interesting that money, which is a condition reinforcer, seems more resistant uh, to this delay discounting. Um, we're really well trained to respond to money. It's almost hard for some people to believe that money has no intrinsic value, but it doesn't. And yet we're used to waiting sometimes long periods of time before we get our money. When we're dealing with other things, what's in this money, beer, candy soda, the slope is much steeper. And if you had to wait 12 months to get a soda, the value is not very high. So this is important. This is really important. Uh, this figure is vital. Um, Let me walk you through it before I go to some of my videos. So on the horizontal axis, time is passing, and you are somewhere along that timeline. So if you're far away from small or large reinforcements, you're way on the left. And as you move forward, slopes start shifting and lines start moving. And eventually, just before time two, in this figure, the two lines cross. And then you get to peak value for small, which is just after time two. But because of the delay, you have to wait longer to get to the large reinforcement effect. What do you take home from this? Simply put, wherever you are on this timeline, you do whatever line is higher. So if you're near time one, you should wait for the large reward because the small reward doesn't affect you very much. But as you approach time two and get very close to the small reward, that spikes up and can skew your behavior away from what arguably would be called wisdom, and you take the small reward over the large reward. And Howard Racklin did a lot of the stuff. It's really really quite clever, and there's important research in here dealing with people who are drug addicts, and you know, cause and effect is a little difficult to define, but people with addictions clearly seem to have different slopes, particularly for the large reward. It drops off way fast, and we'll see that in a bit. So now let's look at some of my carefully selected videos here. Um, this first one, do animals notice reward magnitude? This is from a TED Talk by a researcher, author who I really, really like. I've read many of his books. Um, very smart, very gifted writer. Um, check this out. Do animals notice reward magnitude? It works in people too, for sure. I never get tired of watching that video, both because I'm a big fan of Duvall, and also because the monkey reaction is beautiful. When this was new, NPR did a an audio piece on this in which the author, the either the researcher or the person who did the piece, did this with their children, and gave one child a quarter for getting a book or something, and gave the other child $1 for getting a book. And boy, that did not go over well. Um we notice reward magnitude, and we care about uh, justice. And if you are in an unjust world, you are not happy. Now, later in the chapter, there's going to be a lot of discussions of delayed gratification, and we've already gotten to part of that. So here's the now famous marshmallow task, where we ask children to delay gratification and not eat the marshmallow they're given, and if they wait, they will get two marshmallows. As you can see, that's a challenging task for children, and there's been a lot of research on this, some suggesting that children who are better at this task have better life outcomes, uh, presumably because they are less prone to doing short-term unwise things and are able to delay gratification for bigger rewards later. And that's relevant to what's coming here. And some very clever research here, and some variables that can affect the discounting, and including inserting a delay before you get what you want. And that delay can make you smarter in a sense. Uh, and there's a discussion of pre-commitment strategies like setting your alarm clock. Uh, Most of us with cell phones don't even know what an alarm clock is anymore. But back in the day, as you went to bed, you had to set your alarm clock. Now, if I need to get up regularly at a certain time, I just set it on my phone. And yeah, that is a pre-commitment strategy, but it may have been 4 days ago. Uh, so that's a nice uh, discussion. And yeah, we want happy citizens. We want wise citizens. We want citizens who aren't addicted to things. This research on smoking is really compelling. A friend of mine in grad school did some research with people on smoking to try to reduce smoking behavior. And there's a discussion of hot thoughts. And watching that video of the children with the marshmallow, you can see that they are having some hot thoughts. The marshmallow is sitting right there. Um, Drug abusers who were given extensive practice with working memory tasks uh, decreased the rate at which they discounted rewards. So, yeah, we might be able to help here, but I'm sure that's labor intensive. And drug users seem to choose an immediate hit. Uh, yes, they do. Uh, and from the outside, and you've maybe seen this with people who are in love with people who they maybe shouldn't be. From the outside of that relationship, you can hardly believe that the person is doing such destructive things because they're in love with this loser. But you're not the one making the choice. Trust me. Um, and there's a discussion of steep discounts, self control. There's, Baumeister, 2015. Uh, he was a keynote speaker at one of our site conferences. Uh, he's done a lot of creative research, some of which there's been trouble replicating, but we won't go there. Um, so it's complicated, and because of that, there's probably hope uh, for developing strategies to help these people make wise choices. Nudging, not a trivial term. That's taken deliberately. Contingency management, incentive-based treatments, contingencies. You know, thinking way back to positive and negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is contingent upon behavior. A stimulus is added in the environment, and the probability of behavior increases. So that's a contingency, and also incentive-based treatments. So if you can affect motivation, you can affect behavior. These are the kinds of things that therapists, clinical psychologists, and counselors need to be well aware of. Um, and this smoking study, I started talking about it before, but this is the punchline. So they did an intervention with mothers who smoked. Uh, my mom smoked, but I think she stopped while I was in the womb. Thank you, mom. Um, they did an intervention with smoking moms, and not only did the moms smoke less, but check this out: their babies were higher birth weight and decreased the percentage of babies who were born underweight. That's brilliant, brilliant. Um, so there's a book, Nudging, Improving Decisions about Health, Wealth, and Happiness, Pursuit of Happiness. Welcome to the United States. Um, so getting people to behave smartly because they're nudged and they almost don't even know they're being nudged. That's pretty desirable, and society should worry about that. And there's the B.F. Skinner book that I've already shown you, Beyond Freedom and Dignity. He argued 71, so that's the year I hit grad school. We can use science and behavior to create environments with contingencies and reinforcements that would increase human happiness and well-being. You go, BF. Uh, Although students didn't like the book. Behavioral economics. Uh, this is important stuff. You want to deal with people who really understand statistics, go to an economist. And I gave you a link. So
Here's the definition of link: a relationship between two things or situations, especially where one thing affects the other.
uh, thank you, Google. Sorry, it's always listening.
That's what I'm here for.
Okay, stop. Um, so this is a Wikipedia entry on Richard Thaler, and he's an economist, and he won a Nobel Prize, behavioral economics, and well, he shared it, um, and he melded together uh, psychology uh, and some Skinnerian stuff, and with economics theory. And I'm a fan, uh, both of economists and their mastery of statistics, and also this field of research. And the rest comes much later in the chapter. And behavioral economics and demand curves. For reasons I can't fully explain, when I was you guys, an undergraduate, I think I was basically forced to take an economics course, and I loved it. I had a great time, and it was fun to see math and behavior come together to describe things. And so we have demand curves, which I remember from back in my undergraduate days, and there's an elastic demand curve, whereas price goes up, you you're elastic, you're flexible, and it starts costing too much, and you just don't do it. But inelastic, the man can increase prices, and you just keep doing it. So those are important concepts. And then we have some other figures here. So where you can substitute one product for another. I think he uses Coke and Pepsi, and you get that kind of function where you start off drinking one, but as the price goes up, you quickly switch to the other. Independent, the price of A goes up and affects behavior, but B just keeps chugging along. It's independent. And complements, where they are tied. So as one goes up or down, the other one goes down. And substitutes, complements, interesting discussion. This is kind of fun. I'm remembering the joy of economics. The reinforcements are not all alike, and this is some research done in a faux supermarket with junk foods and healthy foods and changing prices. Um, Odd outcome though, decreasing the price of healthy foods uh, led to more junk food buying, which was of course not probably not what society would want us to do, but that's what happened. Uh, and there's theories of reinforcement, and Skinner, remember, was pretty theoretical. He just his definitions are called circular, and there we are. For these reasons, Skinnerian definitions of reinforcers are sometimes called circular, contingent upon behavior. Stimulus is added, and the probability behavior goes up. So there's no theory there. It's just whatever's true is true. And the animal tells you, or the organism tells you, whether something is reinforcing or not. There's the person who still makes me uncomfortable, uh, not Thorndike, but Clark Hull. Here we had theories of reinforcement, and these are the kinds of things that Skinner uh, rebelled against uh, and became theoretical. And mercifully, this book does not give you any of Hull's mathematics. But Hull talked about drive and drive reduction. And there's Bowles. I'm a fan of Bowles. and a lot of Clark's Clark Hull's stuff didn't hold up very well. Neil Miller, who I'm a fan of, defended Hull, but we don't talk about Hull very much anymore. Now, this was big when I was in grad school, and this is theoretical and very intriguing, and there's tons of creative research to look at. Um, and Premack did a lot of interesting stuff, including attempting language acquisition in chimps. Um, and interesting picture of Premack, the Premack principle. Okay, so we talk about instrumental act or instrumental behaviors. And for Skinner, with rats, the instrumental act was pressing a lever. For pigeons, it would be pecking a key. Um, and the key concept here is, what does pressing the key or lever, or for humans doing one thing, what does it allow you to become, to gain access to? So this is doesn't seem brutally theoretical, but it is theoretical. It explains things, and a lot of research with children here. You let them play with things, and you figure out what they want to do. And not all children are alike, in case you haven't noticed. So you can make uh, getting to play with a preferred toy contingent upon playing with a less preferred toy. So the less preferred toy would be the instrumental behavior, and by doing the less preferred, they get to do the more preferred. And there's monkeys and plungers and balls, um, and there's children, which makes me think of the marshmallow test again. But here they are eating candy or playing pinball, and children are all alike. Some of them would love to play pinball, don't care much about candy. Some of them like candy, don't care much about pinball. And you can predict how that goes. And the Premack principle predicts that what things will reinforce other things, and also accepts that all organisms are not alike. So it's cute. It's nice. And here's some ranking of what we like. Uh, Not so much running in a heavy wheel. 64% sucrose is pretty gross. Light wheel, we like that. 32%, that's pretty good. 16, even better. So you can use that to rank order things and practice with the Premack principle. And there's a discussion of punishment and Thorndike and annoying, and Premack can even deal with that. There are problems um, with it. Uh, it's There's discussion of coffee drinking and sex, and predictions that won't turn out to be true, but ways to get around that and decide that you would prefer sex over coffee, and if you looked at the appropriate time frame. Um, Deprivation is important, and can be important. And if you're deprived of something, that can make doing that thing more desirable. And Timberlake comes up here, and he has done some important research. We saw Timberlake earlier. The point of these results is that access even to a less preferred behavior can be reinforcing if its baseline level has been deprived, it being the less preferred behavior. And behavioral regulation theory, Timberlake again, and the concept of bliss point. This figure is very important. So let's spend some quality time with it. So you've got this behavior, the black dot, and that's your bliss point. If you control the world and nobody is messing with you, you would do 150 units of that behavior versus only 50 units of behavior A. So that's your perfect world. But you live in a world where the man makes rules. And in this world, we have arbitrarily chosen a rule that says if you want to do B, for example, you must do an equal amount of A. So 50 A's gets you 50 B's, 100 A's gets you 100 B's, and so on. So that straight line, notice the dots don't waver. They can't waver because these are the rules. Uh, you want to be at your bliss point, but there are rules, and it's 1 to 1. You must do 1 unit of A to get 1 unit of B. So the question is not whether you're on the red line. You have to be on the red line. The question is where on the red line will your behavior settle? And a simple way of viewing this is imagine you put a tack uh, at the bliss point with a string, and the string has a pencil on it, and you use that to draw an arc, and you make the string longer and longer. And as the arc gets longer, eventually it hits the red line, and it will hit that red line at point 1. That's the shortest distance to the red line. And that's where you're going to end up. Simply put, you will end up at point 1, which is the shortest distance between what the rules of the road tell you about. You must do 1 to 1 and the bliss point. So you want 150-50, but I tell you, you must do 1 to 1. So you say, okay, 100-100. That's where I'm ending up. So that's the minimum distance model down there below. That's pretty cute. And the string tack pencil uh, is a pretty good way of viewing this. When I used to teach this live, we actually did that, and it works. And on this page, yeah, we could set up different rules, and we can have a 1 to 1 rule, or 5 to 1 rule, or 1 to 20 rule, and each of them will put you on a different slope. Unfortunately, and instead of choosing red lines, which they should have to make it coherent with the last figure, they choose black lines, and you have a red arc through them, and those points are where you will end up based on thinking about the previous figure for each of those rule restrictions. It's a little confusing, but trust me, it's just like the other figure, except they messed up picking the colors, and those are the points where you'll end up. And Stadden has done a lot of interesting research, and the matching law comes up again. Now, you may or may not remember that I sort of made a deal about matching research, usually involving VI schedules of positive reinforcement, which engender stable and slow rates of responding. And I said that one of the reasons researchers like these is they're easy to work with. Here's an interesting conclusion. In general, the matching law seems to do a better job of describing behaviors on interval reinforcement. Of course, that's what it was based on. Whereas minimal distance does a better job on ratio schedules. That's cute. I like it. And we shouldn't get, it's like we're looking for your lost quarter under the street lamp. Why? Because it's brighter here and it's easier to see things. But that doesn't necessarily put your quarter there. Um, so we shouldn't become too fixated by our research technology. And now we're talking about, we're getting back to evolution, which amuses me. And it also goes back to shaping and little changes shape behavior and move it in certain directions. And here we're looking at pepper moths in England. And as England industrialized, its factories spewed out more and more soot, and the soot would get all over the trees. And the pepper moths would sit on the trees, and birds would try to find them and eat them. And early on, there's a picture here somewhere. Thought there was. In a second. Ah, no picture. Let's see if I can find one quickly. So there we go. Um, so there's a tree with a peppered moth. And if you're a very dark moth on a light tree, birds are likely to find you. If you're a dark moth on a dark tree, you're less likely to be found. So natural selection comes into play here. And over time, these moths who were stuck with the trees that were available during the Industrial Revolution, uh, they became darker and darker because if you were the wrong color on the tree, you were spotted by predators and you were gone. Principles of variation. Variation is very important. We should celebrate diversity. Anybody who wants to have a homogeneous population of people or a homogeneous country with no variation, you are certainly not a biologist and you don't understand evolution. Variation is good, and that's the foundation or a foundation of natural selection. So Skinner talked about this uh, toward the end of his life, and he was a bright guy. Uh, and there's Darwin, and there's The Blind Watchmaker, which I've read once or twice, Richard Dawkins. Uh, Here's the book. Now, why is it called The Blind Watchmaker? Well, back in Darwin's time, there was somebody who said, you know, if you're walking in the forest and you look down and you find a watch on the forest floor, you know that that wasn't randomly created. It was created by an intelligent designer. So this is behind a lot of intelligent design thinking. And Dawkins went, right at that in this book. And you know, if you have a tornado go through a parking lot filled with 747s, you're not going to get a randomly created 747. That would be the blind watchmaker argument. But this is really quite an important book. And if you're wrestling with this issue in terms of your own thinking here, I recommend it. It's very readable. What's my last link here? Yeah, here's a wiki entry on the book. So, 86. Um, Natural selection, yes. So, yeah, William Paley, 1802 book, Natural Theology. So that's the argument from way back. Dawkins liked to play with computer programs. Uh, as I recall from his book, the programs that he used to generate what's at the end of this chapter, he lost the files, but he did not lose the figures. And all right, here's an industrial explanation storyline too. There was a time when detergent often didn't come in pods, but it came in flakes. So detergent makers wanted nice separate flakes. And they went out and they hired PhDs in physics who understood fluid dynamics and all this stuff. And they said to the physicists, design us nozzles so we can take liquid soap, inject it through the nozzle, and get nice flakes to put in boxes. And the PhDs did what they did, and it was junk. It just did not work. So what the manufacturer did was they did evolution, which is what Dawkins is about to do. So they sprayed, they took the nozzles and they messed with them. They dinged them a little bit, made them a little variable, which is important to evolution. And then they sprayed soap with them. And after they did that, they looked at what they got and they said, well, nozzle 3 is still junk, but it's better than the other nozzles. So then they took nozzle 3 and they messed with that and injected. And then they said, oh, nozzle 1 looks pretty good. And then they did that and they did that and they did that. And simply by, without any theory, they just randomly messed with the nozzles. Eventually, they did what the PhDs couldn't do. They they evolved spray nozzles that could make powdered soap very well. And this is pretty much what Dawkins is doing with his programming. So he's having a program design these little stick figures. And then he intervenes and he looks at them. He said, oh, that's neat. I like that one. So he takes that model and then lets the program mess with that. And then he says, oh, I like that one. And lets the program mess with that, and so on and so on and so on. And eventually, I remember this in the book. It was pretty stunning, and I felt bad that he lost his software. Um, he ended up with some pretty amazing figures, and none of them were intelligently designed. They were randomly designed, but they were selected for. Now he's intelligent, but evolution, survival of certain genes and not others, there's no goal. It's just that this organism is doing better than the other organisms. I may sneeze. I'm sorry. And you end up with what looks like an intelligent design, a watch in the forest floor. And really, it's based on random variation and selection. So there's figure. I remember this vividly. Swallowtail, man in hat, scorpions, bats. Uh, Pretty amazing. Uh, and if you read the book, it's really quite compelling. There are sites on the web that run these programs. I was going to give you a link, but I decided not to. And that's the end of this chapter. So I hope you enjoyed it. It's not a headbender, but it's extremely relevant uh, to society, to therapy, to a happy life. It even gets in a little bit of evolution. So I'm happy with it. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.